first, where are you from? Where are you from? What kind of role do you have in your company? Because it's important for us that we understand who do we have here today in the audience so that we can answer your questions better, right? So now, before Richard starts presenting, and it's going to be like in a minute, I would like to introduce our speaker today. Richard is the head of the customer success department in Weekdone, and he has been helping companies to implement goal-setting workflows for more than 15 years. He is an expert in strategy development and change management. And I hope you enjoy today's webinar because I know Richard has a lot of good examples prepared for you. So do ask questions because this is the person to answer them. So over to you, Richard. Have a great webinar.
Super. Thanks, Anna. So I think I've got my microphone, my camera on. Is it working? Yes, it is. Great. Super. One just thing on the end of there. It would be great to hear from people if there are any topics you would like to see covered in future webinars. As Anna said, we hear a lot of people ask about KPIs versus OKRs and some other areas, but if there are particular things that you would really like to be covered in OKR webinars, we would love to hear what people are interested in. What are the areas of confusion, or where would people need clarity? So with that, let's move on. So what we're going to cover today is really starting from an understanding. Let's make sure we all understand what OKRs do for a business. What's the point of using OKRs? How do these elements fit together? There's a lot of pieces all coming together. There's a lot of different ways that people talk about doing OKRs and aligning with strategy, KPIs, initiatives, plans, and how does it all work together? How do you make it into a process that really works and drives your business? How do we set OKRs to improve a KPI? And we'll walk through an example here, and hopefully it's a good example and makes everybody think about what's really important when you're setting OKRs. That setting of good KRs that drive team action is critical, and we're gonna cover it, and we're gonna look at what some of the common issues are when people write OKRs and why they end up not improving anything. We're going to come on to the questions. So as Anna said, you can ask in the Q&A section of Zoom at any time. We'll try to answer live, but Anna's going to try and collate them at the end, and she's going to come back and ask me some of those common questions. So what are OKRs all about? Well, I think many of you know, a lot of people have read Measure What Matters or a lot of other materials on OKRs, whether it's the common books or whether it's Medium materials or other documents. And a lot of OKRs talk about driving improvements. The focus of OKRs is very much about how do we improve our business. Talk about increased focus, get the company and team focused, working in similar areas, which often leads to aligning the organization. Is everybody working in a similar direction? They should drive impactful execution. They're making people think about what they are working on and is it driving us forward? It creates agility, and agility really means we learn, we adapt. The word agility is often used in a lot of different areas, but it really means how do we learn? How quickly can we learn? The idea of OKRs is they separate outcomes from outputs, deliverables, and they keep those things separate. So there's some great things OKRs can do for you, but how do we actually get the benefits out of it? And that often is where a lot of customers come to us at a position in Weekdone, and they understand those benefits of things they want. They understand that they could really improve, but how to get there isn't always obvious. And how does everything connect together? So what I want to do is I want to start by, okay, well, how do we set OKRs? And really there is two main areas at the company level that we're going to set objectives for. And one side comes out of the vision, mission, strategy. if we're trying to improve a business or we're trying to drive a business in a certain direction, we have a strategy and we're trying to execute on the strategy and setting objectives to drive us in that strategy. An objective is a direction. So what direction do we need to go to deliver that strategy? The other one is KPIs. And we can discuss this one obviously in a little bit more detail, but the KPIs that we need to achieve or how we're going to achieve them drive the setting of objectives at the company level. Some objectives are very much from the KPIs of maybe revenue or customer satisfaction, whatever it is that are real, your company level KPIs. What's really, really important to your business, and are they performing as you would like? Under that level, and really one of the most important areas is the team level objectives and key results. And these are where the changes in most organizations happen. The leadership sets the direction, but making the organization change is very much about what the teams need to get done. And again, KPIs might be an influence here. I talked, maybe the whole revenue number at the top level is a KPI for the company, but different teams might have revenue numbers, or different teams might have lead generation, one might have revenue generation, or different elements of revenue generation within the teams. So KPIs can actually fill in at the high level. Is it a big company-wide KPI that we need to work on, or is it a team level KPI we need to work on? These team objectives or team OKRs are aligning up to the objectives we want to achieve as a company. So the team objectives are driving us in the direction set by the leadership. And these are worked on over time in a quarter typically. So we have quarterly OKRs that drive the teams that they can measure and update and progress. Now, great, we've set some great company level objectives, the teams have set up their OKRs, and then it really comes down to the initiatives, plans, projects, tasks. What do we do to make the KRs move forward? And this is very much where the OKR process aligns, and it kind of needs all these pieces to work together, be set up well, and everybody to understand them to make it work. But how do we set, and why do we set OKRs from KPIs? So basically, here I have an OKR, but there's two types of KPIs that we might be setting OKRs from, or even simply objectives at the higher level. One of them is kind of a growth KPI. So it could be something like revenue, or it could be that we want to increase customer satisfaction from a lower level to a higher level, whatever it may be. We're trying to grow, and we know that from one quarter to the next quarter to grow, we need to do something differently. We need to improve. We need to grow, change, or innovate something to make improvements to make it happen. And that's the connection between that type of growth KPI target and an OKR. The OKR is about what are you going to do and how you're going to drive it forward. The other one for KPIs is very much the quality area. So, in the graph there, we showed one quarter Q3 being below. If we're below the target that we expected, we might need to do something to drive it up. And in this case, below means bad. It could be if we're above a certain area, or we're not between a band of numbers for a measurement, that we're doing it wrong. There's something wrong. It could be something like customer satisfaction. If we've said 75% was our target, and over time it was moving along, and within a quarter we dropped below that, we would understand something has changed. We're not making our customers as satisfied as they were. So basically, we need to do something. We need to change it. So we're setting OKRs to improve a KPI's performance. That could mean growth, or it could mean a quality KPI. These are not OKRs. Taking for example, a sales team's target and putting it as the objective of 10 million and then splitting that out with the different people, that isn't an OKR. Yeah, we could say the objective is send 10 million, the KRs are measurable, and here we go. But this isn't a OKR. The product team, similarly, we might have completion of projects as very commonly seen with product teams. And again, that's also not really, you know, we might have those completions or speed of completions as KPIs. We might have, you know, story points, how many we expect to do every sprint or different things. But just measuring whether we did the outputs also isn't really OKRs. KPIs, targets, and projects delivery status are not OKRs. And it's very, very common when people first start out, and especially in the case of the sales team, I hear a lot from customers say, hey, so easy for sales teams, they have their numbers. Well, that shouldn't be what they put, you know, that's the wrong way to do it. But let's walk through an example here, and I'm going to take an example of trying to deliver more leads. And so it would very much be probably based around a marketing team. And in this case, the marketing team has been kind of running under the level for first quarter of the year, under what was expected. And here we come to the next quarter and we say, well, we expect to get this 1 million in the quarter, this 333,000 leads per month. And basically, that's the target and the lead numbers we expect month on month. In the quarter, that would be that 1 million. And so they go off and they set a OKR. And basically, they just re-add what they've said in the KPI. So, okay, increase website leads this quarter. Yeah, not bad. You know, that is what we want to do. Get 1 million new users to our website. You know, well, okay, we need more leads. Yeah, great. Doesn't feel great. You know, first of all, a single KR. Secondly, it's just really an KPI and the target that we've set here. The KPI target isn't ever a good KR. It's not giving any direction or focus where we're going. Okay, so the marketing team, we reconvene and the marketing team say, well, yeah, they understand the mistake. And they say, right, let's rethink what we really want to drive. So first of all, they start out and say, well, let's improve our main landing page performance this quarter. That's the biggest area we need to drive forward. That's the thing we need to focus on. So let's put that as our objective. Great. We've got a little bit more focus on our objective, on why we're doing it. And then they come up with their 3 key results. And they said, right, we want to reach 1 to 3 positions for 10 keywords. So basically we search for these keywords or phrases. We're in the top 3 SEO ranking positions. Great. Okay. We also, to improve that, we need to publish 12 blog articles, and we also need to do some A/B testing on our main pitch story. And okay, great. They're feeling much, much better. Big improvement over the first one. But whoever's shouting at the screen, some of those don't look good. You're absolutely right. This still isn't quite there. It's not really the way key results should be written. They've set targets. They maybe make progress, but let's come on to look at what they've actually written. Well, reach 1 to 3 positions for the 10 keywords. Now, one of the things is that improving that keywords ranking actually might take 3 to 6 months to achieve. So basically, we might not see any progress on those 10 keywords or minimal progress on those 10 keywords in the quarter. I said earlier, OKRs are written for the quarter. And what is important, we actually think through, is whatever we're going to use as our key result, what is the outcome we're trying to change? Will it move within that time period? When I take actions to make it happen, as we've talked about earlier, will it move? So we probably need to think more about some leading metrics that are going to change in the quarter. That could well be a problem. And actually, this is something we see a lot. We see a lot of people setting some very high level key results, but not thinking about, are they going to change? Is this something that as it changes, we will drive the improvements? Okay, so we come on to publish the 12 blog articles. This one's sort of, it's measurable. We're completing 12 blog articles, but it's what we do. It's an output. It's a deliverable. It's not an outcome, which is a behavioral change. There's no changes in any behavior in this. It's very much, I'll publish 12 blog articles, done, and I'll measure success as me completing outputs. That isn't a great way to do it, but it's usually always possible to come up with measurable outcomes that would improve that. You know, tracking plans, tasks, and projects are not measuring impact. They're measuring what I do. They're not measuring the impact on the business and was it the right things to do. We will also have here an example that A/B test the main pitch story. It's what we want to do, but we need to think about what's the outcome. Why are we doing it? And often asking yourself that why a few times really does help. And you know, in this case, we really haven't got a measure. We kind of got this quasi percentage measure that everybody could argue over, but it's not really measurable. Ultimately, no measurement, not a KR. You know, basically taking KPIs or taking those numbers or projects or project progress and trying to shoehorn them into an objective and key result format is not OKRs. That's not what OKRs are about. That's not what they're meant for. Now, let's come back. And again, the marketing team, they've improved them. You know, they're already heading in the right direction here. But now they're starting to think again and saying, right, okay, we understand that SEO position ranking is tough, but we know that if we could improve the visitors, we could reduce the bounce rate and increase the time spent on the page, we would actually raise in ranking. So maybe we need to think more about those leading indicators that we can influence here, and we'll improve those. So they rewrite the first key result, actually split it into two and said, right, okay, reduce the bounce rate from 73 to 45, somewhere under 50 is always classed as good. And we also see that we should increase the average time on page from 30 to 120 seconds. So we're trying to get people spending a lot more time on that page. Great. We still kind of feel much more happier about that first two key results from the original one we had. Now, publish 12 blog articles. Why are we doing it? We're trying to get people to the page. Okay, but why are we trying to get people to the page? Well, one, that will help with the rating. More people visiting is going to boost the rating. But there's also an outcome we want as well. Why are we getting people to the page? Is it or getting to the blog articles? Is it to drive them to the main landing page, i.e. we write great content that people read, but ultimately them clicking through to look at our product or services or whatever we're offering is really what I want. So we actually update this one and we say, right, well, let's publish blog articles that drive over 100,000 visitors to the main page. We're going to measure the outcome we really need to drive the objective forward. So we get to the last one here, A/B test. You know, we want to improve the story. A/B, that testing of the pitch is something we need to do, but it's not the outcome we're looking for. The outcome might be different things. It might be about signups, it might be about purchases, it might be about, you know, whatever people do next to show that the story is right on those pages, that it connects with the right customers. And in the end, the team decide that increased user to sign-up ratio from 20 to 45 would be the right measure. They have now sat and gone from a KPI and target through a couple of iterations to set a good objective and key results. It's super important to get to this level of setting key results. There's a lot of reasons why, but really a lot of it comes down to making it engaging, exciting, and interesting for people. And if we want to improve that performance of a KPI target, we need to set these KPIs as actionable. We'll see measurable changes in the quarter. We said before, we wanted to increase, in this case, we wanted to increase that improvement in the rankings. Knowing that that's going to take quite a bit of time or length of time to happen, it's okay. That's the way it is. But making sure we set KRs that are actionable and we'll see that measurable change in the quarter is critical. The second thing is to focus on outcomes and not on outputs. The idea is with OKRs, it's very much about the outcomes, behavioral change, or different ways to describe it. And from that level, we then move to what do we do? So whether it's teams working together, individuals in the team, or individuals in the team, we have to take action. We have to do those outputs. We might have to redesign the main page and improve navigation to see if it reduces the bounce rate. It's not guaranteed it's going to reduce the bounce rate, but almost in a sense, we are actioning things to do to try and drive the outcomes forward. And that's very much an agile way of thinking, that we're already into that mode of executing on something to see if it makes the change we want. And if it does, we might continue. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. We're going to publish a blog article on whatever the topic is. And it might be the article, it might be the promotion. There's a lot of different things that drive that forward as a blog article. Maybe to get this messaging done right, we need to get a cross-functional team together and develop and test new messaging as a project. So we set up a project plan, which is driving this increased user to sign-up ratio. Does it connect with our customers? Does it set the right project in place with the right actions within that project to make this outcome improve and change over time? So piecing all those things together, they're all important. If we just migrate our KPIs and projects into objectives and KR format, what we're really doing, we're just duplicating stuff again. So what happened, and you see a lot in companies, is people start to ask the question and say, well, why are we doing this? Why am I doing OKRs when it's the same information in our CRM system or in our marketing system or in our production system, and we just duplicate it? There's no value for me. It's extra work. And they're right. The problem is when you do it wrong, you actually just create extra work. It doesn't engage people. It doesn't make it exciting. You're trying to make sure people within the company are excited and driven by using OKRs, not just feeling it's a duplication of effort. The second thing is you really don't set direction. If I said to a company, hey, deliver 10 million next quarter, there's no direction there. There's a number, there's a target. How and what we're going to focus on could be seen very differently by the teams. I'm not setting a company level focus. I'm not telling people the direction I would like us to go to get that 10 million, which is super important. And if as leaders, we don't set the direction we need to send the business in, we don't tell the teams a common way to get there. And that is really a lack of focus. And it's very common in businesses that KPIs are used to set direction without the thought about, are they really setting any direction? And in a lot of cases, you hear these days from people in businesses that without that direction, they don't understand where the company's going. They don't feel engaged with the business. They don't feel at one with it. They don't feel that what they're working on really contributes. So it's super important to make sure that the focus and the way we're going to improve is shared with everybody to ensure you keep happy employees and keep employees these days. The other thing is it doesn't really make any improvements in the way we work. To say we're using OKRs, but basically do something that's no different to the way we've done it before. We're just using a different term, but it doesn't change the way we work. It doesn't drive these improvements. It doesn't make the things we talked about on the first page really happen. The reason we started doing OKRs was to get some improvements and changes in focus and the way we work and how we align and all those things. And if we don't actually do OKRs or don't actually use OKRs, it won't happen. The last one is collaboration and what I call true alignment. I think one of the big myths with OKRs is some people say, well, yes, what we'll do is we'll connect all our OKRs together from the different teams and connect people into it and make it very complicated. And look, it's aligned because we've got lines drawn everywhere. That's not what I call alignment. True alignment comes about when teams and company, everybody knows what's going on in the business. Everybody knows the direction we're going as a company. Everybody knows what the other team's directions are. And we're all working with the same thought process in those directions. That means, by nature of it, we'll start collaborating. And usually OKRs done well are very good at getting collaboration, true alignment working. OKRs done badly actually can make things go backwards. You know, I've seen where people overcomplicate the OKRs and really drive it to a position where they're not really creating alignment, they only think they're creating alignment in there. So how should we use OKRs? OKRs about the improvements. They're coming from the KPIs, you know, the under over target, the quality KPIs. Where we need growth, you know, we need growth KPIs. That means we need improvements to achieve them. So let's set OKRs and use OKRs to drive those changes in the organization. We also need them to move the company in the direction of our strategy, you know, and that's something very much at the CEO or higher levels is setting these directions that we need to move in. What is our strategy to grow this business longer term, and how are we going to get there in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time? We need to start thinking about moving it forward, and we need to break it down probably into a year and into what is the small step this quarter to get and progress quarterly to where we want to be in 4 quarters' time for the year. And is it moving us in the direction of our bigger strategy longer term? We need to remember the objective is a direction. What direction? What's that focus? What are we trying to achieve? The key result is a measurable outcome. I personally often like the statement, you know, what success looks like. It's still an outcome, but how would you know you've reached success? That's where the measurement parts come in. It's a behavioral change as well. It's an outcome. It's not what you do. It's what behaviors or outcomes you want to achieve. And it's very important to get that conceptually understood by everybody in the organization. Now, starting out badly, in the example, we started from a KPI, we moved with a small step to a better OKR, but not perfect. And then we moved in a third step to a good OKR. It's very common that starting out, people will not do OKRs well. And in some ways, it's better to start using OKRs, but challenge and try to drive them forward as quick as possible to become good OKRs. And that means people need to understand what is a good objective, what isn't, what is a good key result, and what isn't. OKRs are for the quarter. You know, I said just a minute ago, you need to set at the company level and the team level quarterly OKRs. Even at a company level, and often I hear leaders say, yeah, well, I've set the direction for the year, or I've set the objective for the year. That doesn't align people. You know, we're talking about focus and alignment, and it's very important to make sure we set into timescales that people can deal with. You know, as a leader, maybe we can think conceptually about a year ahead, but a lot of teams don't necessarily think that far ahead. Yeah, a sales team knows they have to hit the sales target by the year end, or you know, marketing have to deliver a certain number of leads, etc., over the year. But getting people to really think about the quarter and how they drive those improvements forward and what they do week on week to reach that quarterly OKR is important. The teams set the OKRs that align with company direction and drive the outcomes needed. So it's about this connecting of which direction we want to go and how we're going to get there with the teams executing on it. Teams are really the nucleus of businesses. The teams make the changes. You know, in a very small business, maybe the CEO is doing certain elements to really drive the business as well. But as businesses get bigger, the CEO is steering the direction. The teams are executing the improvements to make us get to that direction. And it's important to think and align OKRs with that. It's also great for the teams. The teams get much more say in what is their objective and what are the key results. obviously negotiating with management, but they get to have an influence in here. And that's one of the great things of OKRs. So as we said earlier, ask any questions in the Q&A section on Zoom, and we will try to answer them live. So we're coming on to that question section. One thing I just wanted to say, if after this webinar you have got other questions, you can drop us an email at hello@weekdone.com. You can also go and join our LinkedIn page. I think, Anna, you were going to drop it in on the messaging.
Yes.
And if you want to email me, it's Richard@Weekdone, and there's my LinkedIn below. Happy to have people on board there. And there we are. So is there any...
Strangely enough, people, I think, didn't feel comfortable to use the Q&A section, but sent some private messages to us. So we do have some questions, but they're not in the Q&A. So I'll read them out for you. And then people feel comfortable to post your questions in Q&A, because that way everyone will see the answers, both from our support team and from Richard, because he's going to answer them live. So let's start with the first question, which is, should OKRs be set only based on KPI performance? We're a research team in a non-profit company and we don't really have any KPI targets.
They're not only KPIs, no. I mean, I said about the strategy, I mean, and even if you don't have KPIs set, there are probably still areas you want to improve. The thing with OKRs is they're not set for business as usual, they're set for improvement. So the best thing is it often goes hand in hand that once you start to set improvement OKRs, even in research companies, you end up then saying, well, actually, we do have some KPIs. There are some things that we do as processes or we do for our customers that we need to improve, or we could improve, or we should measure to understand whether we're maintaining performance. But an OKR could be on anything you believe needs improving. Obviously, if it is a KPI, it's driven from there. And often things about improvements come from the strategy side. So if we want to be the best researchers, there's certain areas we might say, well, we could improve this, or we could drive this differently or better or more efficiently, or it would make our customers happier. So it doesn't have to be from KPIs. I think what you'll find is it'll often help you get to where your KPIs are. And often in early stage companies as well, you know, if you're a startup, you don't have KPIs. You don't know what those KPIs are, apart from, yeah, we'd love some revenue and some other areas. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have OKRs to drive the improvements or what you're trying to drive, or what you believe you're trying to drive at the moment. It may well change, but it helps you focus. I hope that answered that question.
We have an interesting question that just came in, and I want to go directly to that one. It's about the OKR cadence and how often different teams should be setting OKRs.
In general, we talk about setting them quarterly. So you set, the cadence is almost set in the quarterly OKRs, but within that, there's a lot of processes, rituals, whatever you want to call them. The idea is that really, you should be able to set, and obviously the first quarters it's much harder, but a lot of times people will start setting OKRs 2 weeks before the end of the quarter, possibly to 2 weeks afterwards. Often you can get that down to sort of a smaller level. You can take 2 or 3 weeks total to get those OKRs set and agreed. And in some cases, you know, we've even seen companies do it in a couple of weeks when they've really become familiar with setting it. But usually you're setting it for the quarter, and that's where you start from. It's the big things you're trying to drive in the quarter. What's important though is, you know, when do we have team meetings? You know, we would say once a week, and often some of the best practices are things like Friday having a team meeting, because on Friday you finish the week, everything's fresh in your mind. You can set what needs to be done for the next week and how you're going to do things to drive the OKRs forward, and have that discussion Friday. When you come in Monday, everybody's re-energized, best, most productive times. Everybody gets on and executes and starts working on it. You've also got things like team reviews. How do we share it with all the other teams? And that could be monthly or every 6 weeks. Very important for alignment. If I share what is my OKR, why am I doing it, what's worked, what hasn't, in a bit more context, it gets everybody to understand what I'm doing and why, and it helps in that alignment process. So I hope that answers that question.
I hope so too. I think it was a really great answer. But if you feel like the answer wasn't clear, or if you want to clarify something else, please post a follow-up. We have a really great question. I feel like this one probably bothers a lot of people. And it says, best practice suggests that OKR should not be used in individual performance reviews, but it's easier said than done. Some individuals are driven by metrics and are demotivated with statements like, it's okay if you just achieve 70%. Is this a common occurrence, and how to address this?
Is it common? Yes. Personally, I would never use personal level OKRs. One of the things that was talked about earlier about what OKRs should do, they should create this alignment. If you are setting personal goals, you're actually systematically driving the wrong behavior in companies. The point of OKRs is to set how the team works, or how the team improves, and get people to collaborate and work together. As soon as you do it down to an individual level, you tend to generate silos. It becomes kind of too rigid. It becomes too fixed on what each person's going to do. So one of the problems is, I think, there is this issue that people implement OKRs at a personal level because they see it as a performance review system, which it isn't. You're kind of right, though. You would still have probably personal KPIs in there. And why would somebody bother to contribute to the OKR? Well, if they understand that what we do and how we improve, and I've run large sales teams. The salespeople tend to be the worst in the world. They only care about themselves, and they only care about them hitting their target to get their bonus scheme. But if we get them together and say, guys, we're all going to contribute into an OKR, team OKR, and this is how we're going to make sure we all hit our bonus, how we improve as a sales team, how we drive ourselves forward compared to the competition, or improve the way customers perceive us, it is possible to get people to collaborate and work together when they can see there's a point in doing this that will help them all. It generally doesn't work when you go to the personal level. It's something that feels wrong. And it's interesting why it's come about, this personal level OKRs. They work good for personal improvements. If I said as a salesperson, hey, I want to improve my negotiating skills as one of my key results, and found some way of measuring the outcomes of that, and some other areas I want to improve, that's great. That's a personal OKR for me to improve. It's not linked up to the company level per se. If we're setting company improvements, which is really the focus of OKRs, stopping at a team level generally makes sense, because you're trying to get this collaboration working together and common vision. And you're trying to get everybody's ideas in to drive you forward. Thanks. That was a good question. And it's very common. And it's about making sure people understand why they're doing OKRs. It's that big picture stuff that's often missed.
We actually do have a lot of questions about OKRs and performance reviews. So I'm guessing this is the main topic that the KPIs bring out whenever we talk about
I think
KPIs.
one of the things is, and let me just see if I can pull this up here 1 second. There it is. So I don't know, have some of you read this Measure What Matters? If you look at Measure What Matters, pretty much you would say was the book of 2018 that many people have read, late 2018, beginning in 19. And it talks, section 15 talks about this continuous performance management. It talks about separating. It talks about how it was goals, compensation, performance management, whereas OKRs, compensation, evaluation, conversation, feedbacks, and really changing the way it's done. There's things here talking about, talking to people and engaging with people and having discussions with people was far more valuable. It goes on to talk about feedback. It talks about an example in 16 about how Adobe ditched that performance reviews. I would definitely recommend reading it. It's not going to give you all the answers. It's going to challenge a lot of people. I don't think there is all the answers yet, but there was something in here and I thought I had highlighted, must have not. Somewhere it talks about people are not, we've never found a formula to evaluate people. And this is such a true statement. That's something that really I can fully agree with, I've done performance reviews for sales teams for years, and I hated it. It was a very artificial system of scoring people and everything else. And it kind of, in a sense, is you're trying to find a formula for how people work or how they are, and it just never seems to fit properly. I hope that answers it. It's not a simple question. There is bits of OKRs. You could say, the soft bits. How do people engage in the OKRs? How do they play in the team environment? Do they contribute to the OKRs? There's some soft things that could be used there, but there shouldn't be the hard measures of OKR performance or track or levels used in that performance. Okay, Anna, next one.
We have a question. We actually have 3 different questions, but I think it's the same question. So I'm going to give you a little bit of context. The first one asks, would it be a right approach to cascade down OKRs? So upper level KR will be down the line OKR, so would become an OKR for a lower level team. Then another question on the same topic, how do you set OKRs when 2 different teams influence the outcome?
Okay, good. So basically, let me think that through. In a sense, the first one. So cascading is a bad word. You should probably not use the word cascade, and you shouldn't take a high level key result and cascade it to a team, because that's telling the team what to do. And it tends to end up where we end up with KPIs or numbers rather than what to do. The way it should work is the cascade, in a sense, is what is the objective we want to achieve, i.e., if at the company level we said, hey, we want to improve customer satisfaction and make it a differentiator. That's the objective. Now, we could start to come up with key results at the company level and start to say, well, that one's for sales and that's for this, and that's me as a leader telling the teams what's important. What I would be far better doing is sharing the objective with them, why we're moving this way. Hey, we want to differentiate ourselves. We see that customers love us. They love the way we work. And can we improve the satisfaction where we could really drive the business forward? But leave it to the teams to come up with our objective and key results that align up with that area. In a sense, it's the same answer to the second question there. The answer is teams they align with the same direction. They don't align with the same key result. That's usually bad practice. There's something wrong. You've created artificial key results at levels. The team OKRs should align up. So if we were trying to drive, say that example of customer satisfaction, or we might have a product team working on the things that could improve customer satisfaction in the product. We might have a customer support team trying to reduce the support tickets and times and other things that would make the customer happier. We might have a marketing team trying to set up a portal or customer discussion areas to help improve, those discussions and self-help groups for customers. They're all aligned with a common direction, but that direction set at a higher level, and the teams are working on something that's within their team or within their context to drive towards that. I hope that answered that question. It's actually a very, very common question that's asked, and it's often overthought by people. People try to drive too hard from top down versus saying set direction, context, get the teams to add OKRs and up. To do that, you need to teach the team leaders at least what are OKRs, why you write them, how you write them, what's an outcome, what's an output, etc.
We have another question about cadence, but this one is a little bit different, so I would like to bring this up. Can company OKRs be set yearly to ensure alignment throughout the year, and team OKRs be set quarterly to support the company's overall yearly objectives?
Almost. I would say yes, definitely you can have annual objectives at the company level. Very, very common. And I think, if you start up and you don't know where you're going next quarter, there's no point in setting annuals particularly. But if you're a business that's been running a period of time, you've very much got from your strategy, which might go 2-3 year direction, you need those bigger annual objectives. Now, the one thing I say is you don't set only annuals at that company level and then leave it to the teams to set their OKRs for the quarter. You still need to narrow it down. You need to set focus at the company level for the quarter. The reason being is if I share, and there's some good examples out there, one of them was a company selling software that I heard of, and literally their problem was that the direction was set by the leadership. They said, hey, we really need to grow. We need to approach some of our bigger tier customers. We're going to try to move into their space. So that was what was sent out. Some big numbers were sent out. And so the sales team, said, okay, right, we just need to start expanding with salespeople into some of the key geographic areas. The marketing team said, maybe we start marketing to bigger customers. And the product team said, okay, well, that means we need more features. But, we're in small, medium business, so we need more small and medium business features. So every team was working hard. They were trying to improve the business, but they all went in totally different directions. And after 6 months, they kind of understood that they'd made not any progress. But everybody was working hard. There were some great things going on, all in different directions. And if you don't set a common direction, this is where you get that problem that was mentioned earlier, that people talk about, well, teams need to work in alignment or work together. That's set by the leadership. If you don't set the direction for the quarter to get to the annual, and it's 4 quarters, you step there and you see how you go, you will struggle at those lower levels, or you get confusion or the potential for people to go different directions. So yes, annuals are very common, often helps a lot, in setting the bigger direction, and to make sure that next quarter you think about those big directions to go in.
To follow up on that topic, so that we stay on that topic, are C-levels expected to set KRs too? I saw in the deck that C-levels set objectives, but how do we ensure it is aligned if there are no KRs set at the company level?
Well, KRs are outcomes. So if it's an outcome, somebody needs to do something to drive it. And if you're setting an outcome as a CEO, that means you're doing it. If you want the teams to do it, you can't tell them the key result you want. You can't tell them the outcome measures that you want. It usually just doesn't work well that way. And again, if you actually look at Measure What Matters, there was the example of the football coach, and unfortunately somebody had drawn the arrows going down. If they'd drawn the arrows going back the other way, it would have made total sense to people. But usually it doesn't work that way. And you need to think about what you're doing as CEO. You've set the KPIs, let's say. You've set the numbers. That's how we budget. That's, we have those values we need to achieve, or that's the growth we expect. Now, as CEO, I have to set the direction we're going to go to improve in, how we're going to execute on a strategy, or what are we going to focus on to drive our KPIs up as a company at the level, and move forward, and get the teams to set their OKRs that drive it forward. If I set a KR, and what most often happens, and the worst thing that usually happens, is the KRs just end up with the KPIs at the C level. There could be a KR at the C level, which is something that the CEO is going to action to drive the business forward. But that's not usually what ends up. They usually end up as the KPIs again, and it drives a complete mess and wrong behavior all the teams below. it's not something we would recommend. We've actually seen that if people do that, it makes it overly complicated and often it results in failure.
There is a very similar question, which shows that there is so much confusion still about the KPIs versus OKRs. And the question is, what if we have KPI targets as company level key results? Can a KPI target be an objective for several teams?
No. Yeah, it's a KPI for, a KPI tree is a separate thing from your OKR tree. What's the point of doing it? What value are you bringing? You're actually jumbling two separate things together. You're jumbling what we want to achieve in the numbers. And yes, it might be we have a sales team and they're responsible for this target of level. And we have a support team that also delivers revenue and here's their level. And we have a services team that also expect to deliver this much revenue. But just telling them the revenue, you've probably got it in the budgets, you've got it in their compensation plans, you've got it in their CRM systems and everything else. And I'll often say to people, so if you add it to a fourth place, is that going to make it happen? No, it's never worked that way. I know people believe that if they just keep adding what they want people to do in more and more places, it's going to make it happen. It doesn't. What makes it happen is setting clear direction. If you start to jumble your KPIs up with direction and how you're driving people and what you're trying to get them to improve and think about, you're sending a confused message. You need to keep clarity between your KPIs and what they're for and what the OKRs are for. And the role of the leadership at the top level of companies in OKRs is very much about setting the direction. It's taking from the strategy into those time periods and setting the course we will sail and why in the near term, so everybody understands it and can set and improve the things the best.
Seems like a lot of questions were actually about if the objective could be a KPI target. So I think this answer settles it. An objective should never be a KPI target because it will never work.
It shouldn't be, no. And I know people love to jumble them up together. And I think the thing is that they think by putting them all together, it'll make it easier for people. Actually, it tends to make it more confusing. Separating the numbers we're trying to achieve from the directions and what we're going to do to make them improve, keeping them separately keeps them clear. There's a lot of things in business that you should keep clearly focused on. I love KPIs, they're great things, and under that, even metrics, you might have 5-6 KPIs and then you've got a bunch of metrics you measure under it. Great. But how and when you've got issues with those measurements or you need to improve them, how are you going to improve is a very different question. And the problem is once you start to jumble it together, people can't decipher which bits is improvements, which is the number, which bit is the one I should be looking at to make the decision on how and which direction we go. And I think what we've often seen is when people jumble it all up together, it ends up where the teams and the users and the people in the teams are confused. The lack of clarity and focus doesn't help them execute.
We have 3 more questions, one bigger one and 2 small ones. Yeah, that's really nice. Unless actually more come in, we have 3 so far. I'm a marketing manager in a small business in the music industry. Sometimes we struggle to reach the quarterly objectives. Would you recommend to establish longer periods, for example, 4 months or in semester OKR? Thank you.
Would I recommend it? No. What you'll find is lengthening the time periods doesn't usually help most companies, most businesses. I think you've got to stand back and understand what's the or why are we struggling? Is it a little bit like the example we said earlier, and it was somewhere in the marketing one. Let me try and go back here. Yeah, here it was. So, this might be one we set, but the ability to move that forward means we've probably got to do 3 months of work to make it change before we start to see the changes, i.e. it's a very lagging metric that a lot of things have to happen in. Is that the reasons why? Or, you know, if that is the case, it's about coming back and saying, well, what are the outcomes we need to change? It's often about what are OKRs, what is important, what can we change over the quarter? The other one could be sometimes the speed at which the organization can develop and set and agree OKRs. And if you're just taking a little bit longer at the start, I wouldn't change the time period. I would focus on the process of setting the OKRs. You know, as a leader, I mean, we've actually got ourselves where we can do it pretty much in a 2-week period within Weekdone. But it's all about making sure that we set the company level objectives at least 2 weeks before the end of the quarter. We're thinking about them sometime even before that, but we usually got them now 2 weeks before the quarter. We give the teams enough time to set sort of some provisionals and some back and forwards. And typically, almost by the start of the quarter or within a week after the start of the quarter, we're ready. You know, we're ready to move on and start executing. So there's a number of reasons. Is it the moving of the key results, i.e. reach the quarterly objectives? It probably means you've just put too big a key results in there. You've not thought about what we can do and what will move. What's the leading measures or sub-measures of the big thing we're trying to achieve? And sometimes that comes down to KPIs again. KPIs are the big things, and they're driven by multiple different sub-elements. You know, revenue is not one thing. There's 1,000 or 1,000,000 different things you can do to increase revenue. So it's very complicated. And that means, in a sense, you've got to think about which ones are we focused on and what do we need to do to change those. So it does, we do hear a lot, sometimes people saying, well, let's extend the time period. The problem is then you lose the agility. You've really got to focus on why and what is the problem of why we're taking longer, or why can't we move them? Did we pick the right outcomes to measure? Did we do the right things to measure? Where's the fundamental issue lie?
Mm-hmm.
So,
is it possible to use OKRs only and no KPIs at all? Because I guess you made KPIs sound so terrible and so scary.
Is it possible to use OKRs? You could do, but usually you have to. Most businesses have some KPIs. You know, if you don't have any levels you're expecting, if you're not expecting to reach a certain revenue, or you know, even if you're a non-profit organization, you're probably expecting to help or assist or do, there's something you're expecting to do. Most businesses would always have some form of KPIs. I think, are they set well? Maybe, maybe not. You don't have to have them. It could be more strategic, but you could also just think about what needs to improve. But again, you know, there's probably a reason you're trying to improve it, and which improvements should you focus on? Remember, with OKRs, the problem is if there was 20 things that we could improve, how do we pick which ones are the most important to focus on? We can't put 20 OKRs in to improve. That isn't focus. So often the KPIs are used as a way to understand what is good enough. You know, if we're above this line, we're okay. We don't need to set an OKR for that. We don't set OKRs for every KPI. We only set them where we need growth or we're not achieving. You could do it without KPIs, and some startups, you know, you kind of don't have KPIs at the start, but you tend to build on them. You know, revenue is usually one, but there's usually a lot of other specific ones to your business, or the generic startup type KPIs as well.
There is a very good question, which is a small one, but I think it's important that we bring it up. You're talking about setting OKRs on a team basis. What is the ideal size of the team? Some organizations refer to an entire department as a team.
Mm-hmm. That's a brilliant question. And unfortunately, there's no simple answer there. I think you know, a team and what levels do you set those OKRs at? It does depend a bit. Is that whole team, even if it's 30 people, if it's a development team, we've got front end, back end, maybe product managers, are they all working to a common higher level where we can have OKRs and discuss whether we're reaching or whether our sprints and projects and what we're working on are driving us to that higher level? Do we need separate front, back, and PM type OKRs? It's often a very tough question to answer. What I would tend to say is start at the highest levels and work down and see if it works. Don't rush down and try and force it on all levels. Start simple, start light, start agile in a sense, and see if it makes sense to go down to the next level. Do the OKRs feel right? Does it work for everybody in there? Does it set the right direction? Does it drive the right discussions? That's what's really important. It's very, very hard, and sometimes that might mean that we have different ones for different teams or sub-teams or department levels and teams. Sometimes not. Sometimes we regard the OKRs at a higher level with everybody driving to the same OKRs. It's not simple to say which is right, and probably there isn't a right and wrong way. It's what works in your organization, and it depends what you do and how those things connect together. The thing I will say is if you tend to layer too many OKRs, it tends to get very artificial and it starts to look wrong and feel wrong. That's why I always say, start simple. And some people talk about company and team as we do. They might have a structure with departments in the middle, but sometimes they don't put department level interlinks or aligning objectives or OKRs in between there. It depends though. It really, really depends. And I've seen it done all different ways for different organizations and all of them work. So sorry, it's not a specific answer, but I think the simple answer is don't rush to the most complicated. Start simple, work your way down and stop where it feels right.
We just have 2 small questions left. So I'm guessing we have answered all of the question. So one question is that there are a lot of OKR examples on the internet where KRs look like KPIs. Are they wrong then? Or does it work for some teams and doesn't work for others?
It's wrong. In most cases, it's wrong. Now, I talked a little bit about, if you're a startup, your outcome you want might be to reach a certain level of revenue. It might be to get the next level of seed funding. You have to get, I don't know, $200 MRR revenue. Otherwise, the next funding is not going to come. You might have it in that case as the KPI is the outcome needed. But in most cases, it's just bad practice. It's basically lazy practice, because what's it telling to somebody? It's not telling somebody what to do or how to improve something in the way we do. It's not talking about a behavioral outcome change or a direction to go. And does it add any value in there? I think that's what you've got to look at and ask yourself is it's easy to add it, but what does it do for you? And often it actually makes it a lot worse. It makes people confused, or everybody starts to focus only on the KPI and not how we're going to get to the KPI. It can work for some, but generally it's just bad practice. Having KPIs set up or KPI trees in effect look very similar to an OKR. You might have a revenue at the top and it splits down and all the way down to individuals that are revenue generating. But that's one thing, and that's to do often used for performance evaluation and everything else. But the OKRs of how we're going to drive the improvements and behavioral changes to improve things are different. So I hope that answers that question.
Double checking if we have anything else coming in. So we have a really interesting question, which I think is a really good compliment for you, Richard. The question is, do you provide any training on how to implement OKRs?
We do, as a group, we provide. So Weekdone is a software, and one of our beliefs is we like to share our what we've learned on OKRs, we have onboarded many hundreds of companies to use OKRs. And we've seen, where people have succeeded and where they've failed. And it's, we have that advantage of seeing that. A lot of it is how we also do a lot of training, and it's included as part of the Weekdone product that we do the training and help customers get up and running on OKRs. So we do offer that training as part of the product and the services we offer with the product. It's something that we believe strongly with. I know, I think we saw some people on here say they were OKR consultants and stuff. It's super important that companies do OKRs well. If they actually set good OKRs at the, or good objectives at the team level, good OKRs at the company level objectives, team level OKRs, that really drive and motivate the team to get engaged and think about how they're going to achieve it and get more agile and energetic and excited, it works. It works really well. But there's a lot of people that never get there. What we've seen is by offering the training as part of the product solution, we have seen a huge improvement. We would actually say, if you read a lot on the internet, it'll say 80% of people fail with OKRs. We would say, with Weekdone, 80% succeed, that have the training from us and we help them through. It's a learning process, all of the consultants on here, they've probably been through a lot of learning. They've been through different customers and how to guide them and get them through to the end to working with OKRs. It's a journey. It's hard work. I know the OKR principle is very simple, but I think truly making it work is not so easy as it looks. It's almost kids you, it fools you that an objective and key result is relatively simple to understand, but how does everything need to work together to make it really successful is a little bit harder in a sense. It's all the moving pieces have to work together. I saw a Q&A one pop up again.
Yes, there is one more question. What if the back office team, I think it means operational team, can find a direct contribution to company OKR, then should they only keep the work control for KPI but not OKR, or they should find a way to improve the change to create an OKR?
Sometimes there's a company level objective set, and it might not be one, it might be 2, 3 company objectives, and some teams can't really align with what they work on with that. Doesn't mean they don't and shouldn't put their own OKR for areas they want to improve in their team. It might not be aligning up to the company, but I've seen it a lot where some teams will set their own team OKR for the quarter to make sure they keep improving areas they believe are worth improving, but maybe it's not aligning up. Obviously, you try and find something that they could influence aligning up, and some of that is making sure that the company level objectives are broad enough. And often that's the thing that takes a little bit of time to understand is how broad should the company objectives be even for the quarter, or how narrow should they be? And do they engage all the teams or not? They don't always, you just couldn't, it's possible to do that. But sometimes it just takes a little bit of thought. But I've seen a lot of companies say, well, okay, maybe the ops team or the finance team this quarter, there isn't something directly them to do. It's much more focused on say, product marketing, sales teams. But maybe the finance team said, well, okay, we could improve our debtor days. We could reduce the debtor days, and that's something we want to focus on how we're going to reduce that or improve our cash flow through reducing debtor days. And they can go off and set that and execute on it and still be doing something to keep improving. Most teams have a certain amount of time they can use for improving every month, every quarter. And it's kind of important to make sure they do use that time to improve. Otherwise, the business as usual takes over and we are not driving the business forward. So it depends. If you can find something, then okay. If you can't, it might be that you're looking for areas you could improve, or it could be one of your KPIs that you want to improve on. It's not something that's company level, but in operations, it could be about cycle times or quality output or things like that, or quantity outputs of stuff that you could improve. that maybe is not directly related, but it's to the current objectives, but it is improving the business.
All right, I think that is it. The Q&A is
Good.
quiet.
Super. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and thanks a lot for attending. We will be sending out the video. Actually gets sent out from Zoom, usually within 24 hours, as I said. And thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the week. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.